right, so we just have JP Novkid drop the message. Hello, good evening. Um, yeah, so for those of you that can hear me, please go ahead and drop a message in the chats, in the comments, so that I'll be sure that you can hear me clearly. Okay, so if you can hear me, drop a message in the comment. Thank you. I'll be sharing my screen now. We are going to be building a full API, right? A book API. The expectation is that we should have an API that can perform the major, CRUD operations using Express.js, using MongoDB and Mongoose, right, as an ODM. And we're going to be setting up the Postman collection to see how this actually works. So I'll I'll pay a lot of attention to the Postman side of things, right? I want you to pay attention to that as well. I'll put a lot of work into explaining the details of Postman and how you can use Postman for API testing, right? So do me a favor, drop a message in the WhatsApp group, drop a message on Discord server as well. Let's give others 2 minutes to join us before we kick off, okay? So please go ahead and drop that message, and I'll be expecting us to resume in 2 minutes. All right. I think we're good. We're good. We have others joining already, so let's get started. All right. So if you can see my screen, I'm sharing this 300 Dev Days book API. So it's an API we're going to be looking at today. Let me share this with you in the chat, and yeah, you guys can also drop this on WhatsApp. You can share on your WhatsApp group. Hello, Nana. How are you doing today? All right, so I'm dropping this in the chat here. JP Novkit, please do me a favor. Pick up that link and share that link in the uh, 300 Dev Days WhatsApp group, right? And you can also drop a message asking them to join in because we're live, okay? All right, so now that you have the link, you can go ahead and clone that repository. The README section gives a detailed description of what we're going to be looking at, right? It's an API built with Node.js and MongoDB. You have the process of cloning it, right? Of course, my username goes in here. Okay, Solomon Marvel 97 goes in here. Maybe I can even edit that while we're on this session. Then you open the book API. That's the name of the folder, basically, right? You install the packages because you have your package.json there. So just go ahead and install the packages by running npm I or npm install. Um, yeah, so you can also create the .env file. You need to have this. Create the .env file. The env file represents your environmental, the file that contains your environmental variables, right, such as the Mongo, URI, and the port number, which is port 5000. Okay, so based on the development environment configured on my end, we are going to be using MongoDB locally, right? Of course, we have covered the session where we learn to install MongoDB, right? Whether on Windows, Linux, or a Mac, especially if it's Debian, because we covered that. If you're using a different distribution and you are finding it difficult to install MongoDB, do well to drop a message on WhatsApp or Discord, and we can assist you there. All right. So just put this into your .env file. So you literally have to create the file. I'll show you what I mean. So if I go to my desktop, let's say I make a directory called mav. All right. Okay, so let's go to mav. All right. Now within this file, I can say touch.env. Okay. If you are a Windows user, you can of course create that .env file like that as well. Maybe you right click and say create a new file .env, right? You have to put in that dot first. Okay. So this is a dot file. Okay. So .env, then you can open up that file in VS Code. All you have to do is copy what we have here. So I can click on this. I hope you can see my screen clearly. I can copy that to this file. So let me zoom in so you can see this clearly as well. All right, so I can paste that in here. You see I have the Mongo URI with MongoDB localhost 27. So that's 27017, right? So I have that here, slash bookdb. That would be my database. And I also have the port 5000. All right, so let me take that off for now. Let's delete this because I'm simply going to show you how this should be done so that we can focus on Postman, right? We've covered CRUD operation already before. So yeah, so when you're done, these are the endpoints we're going to create, right? The post endpoint slash API slash books to create a book. We have the get endpoint to get all books. We have the get endpoint by ID, right? So where we can get a book by ID. Okay. So this is what it looks like. We have the endpoint to update a book. So we can update the details of a book using this endpoint, given the book ID, of course. And we also have the endpoint to delete a book, right? We have the endpoint to search for a book, given the key, right? So we can have the key author as John Doe. This returns all the books that was written by John Doe, just like what we have here. So, yeah, we're going to test this. If you clone that repository that I shared already, just I think that should be the book API, right? Yeah, correct. Okay, so let's open this with VS Code so you can just see what this looks like. For those of you that are not looking at this from GitHub already, okay? So right here, you see we have the Postman collection. We added it here, so you can easily import this, into your own environment, right? If you have Postman installed, by the way, if you don't know what Postman is, it's an API testing tool, okay? So just go to Postman. Let's just search for Postman. Hold on 1 second. All right. Okay, so just search for Postman on Google. You're taken to the Postman API platform. So it's an API platform for building and testing APIs, right? I think I've mentioned this before. All you have to do is download it. Okay, there are other API testing tools, right? A lot of them, right? If you look at my laptop here, you see I have down here I have HTTP, right? So I have HTTP. I have a bunch of other tools in here that I use for API development. But yeah, you see I also have Rapid API. Postman is good, right? In my opinion, I think it's among the best. Yeah, so the free version is good enough to do a lot of things actually. So just go ahead and download the Windows or Mac or Linux distribution version for yourself, right? For Linux, I think you can get several options from here. I believe so. Let's see. I clicked on Linux. Oh, you can even try this out in the web. Okay, so try it out in the web if you want to. Yeah. So this is how you basically do installation with PowerShell or Mac, Apple Silicon version or Intel chip uh, option, then Linux, right? Anyways, let's go ahead and show what this looks like after downloading it. So this is what Postman looks like right here. So you see we're already testing this book API already. So I have the post endpoint to create a book, the get endpoints to get all books and to get book by ID. I think maybe I should zoom in on this one as well. See, put this on a different page, probably make it bigger. Okay, all right. Maybe I should take off my picture from there. That's not necessary for now. Okay. All right. So this is what we have. This is Postman. So you can let me zoom in again. Okay. So you can create a book. These are basically endpoints, right? A lot of people refer to these as resources as well. When you click on when you make a call to this endpoint, which is localhost 5000 /API/books, what you're basically hitting on the back end is referred to as a resource. Yeah, so which most times can be a function that you're simply calling on the back end. It processes that particular request. It can call as many functions as possible, to process your request, and then, sends back a response with the result of what you have requested for, right? So if I should call this, I say create a book. I can put in the book details here, right? So I can say, let's say Marv goes to school. Oh yeah, I have to put that in the body actually. So let's click on the body. Marv goes to school. Goes to school, right? I put in the author. It can be Magic. You have to make sure your server is running anyways. Yeah, you can set the publish dates, the amount of pages, if it's fiction, right? So I think let's just say action. So if I send, that this is giving us an error because our server is not running. So if I go back to the code right here, let's open up our terminal. Remember, we're going to have a walkthrough through the code anyway. So let's just say npm start. Npm start works for us because in the package.json, we have configured the script start to run this command, which is nodemon source slash app.js. So this is the source folder, and this is app.js right here. So we have configured this in the npm start, script. So if I say npm start, it's simply going to run this command right here. Okay, and this is currently running. So let's see, it's running on port 5000, MongoDB connected. Good. If I come back to Postman and I run this again, you see that record was created. So I have Marv goes to school, Marv Magic, right here, the publish date, the pages, the genre, the ID, right, that was created alongside this my record, and of course the version. But let's just go to get all books, and let's see all the books we have. So you see we have two books for now. One that I created earlier, and this is the one we just created now, right? Marv goes to school, author Marv Magic. I can get the book by ID. I just have to specify the ID in here, and I run this. This would return that specific book that I just created, right? And of course, I can also update a book with the ID. So if I put the ID right here, click on the body, and I say the new title is Marv Goes to School, maybe part 2. Marv goes to school. Come on, to school. I can say part 2. Right? Maybe I don't want to update the other information, right? Let's just take the other things off. And if I should send this, it says, oh, the author is required. So most of this were configured. So I must, it's not like I'm trying to patch some parts. I'm trying to update the whole thing. So let's just say my magic again, publish dates, maybe number of pages now, 600. And this is still action. So let's say action, right? So if I send this now, so you see, we have the same record with the same ID, but now we have a new name, right? Marv goes to school part 2, and the pages also increased to 600. Okay, I can search for books using this get endpoint, and I can specify, the author. Now I'm using John Doe. It gives me the previous record I created, and if I specify to say Marv Magic, right, it's going to give me the record I just created now, which is this, right? If I try to delete the book, given the ID, yeah, let's just put that ID in there, send, and it says book deleted. So if I get all books again, the expectation is that I shouldn't see the book I created as my magic, right? We just have one record. Okay, so this is simply how you can perform this test. I'm going to come back to this. I'll show you how to create a collection, probably how to also create a workspace. If you want to create a new workspace, you can invite people to collaborate with you, right? And I would explain some of the details of this page. Okay, let's just quickly run through what we have in this API, right? If you're just joining us, check the chat. We have the link to the GitHub repository right there. All right, so let's go to the code. So this is our code. And if you're wondering, how did we set this up? Yeah, I want to know how we actually went ahead to set this up. I have a README document here that explains the whole process, right? And I should be able to open it up here as well, so you can see what I have. So let's just create a new note here, paste the whole thing. Okay, so I mean, this is not properly structured the way I want it to. I was hoping, let's see, 1, 2, 3. No. So this is a new note taking tool, and it seems like, okay, it doesn't organize these things the way I want it to. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I think I should be able to preview this with Notion, I guess. So we can actually, look at it on a different page. Um, yeah, we can look at it on a different page. Anyways, if you're on your end looking at this, simply have the preview, right? There's a preview option, VS Code. Okay, I think we can actually work with that. Right? Let's work with that. Let's work with that preview. So let's take off Notion for now. All right. So this is the preview. So let me reduce this a bit. Okay. All right. So looking at what I have on my screen, this is the structure for the project. So we are creating this. We're going to make the folder. Make directory. That is the meaning of this command, right? So you make directory book API. You change the directory into that new directory you just created, and then you perform npm. You perform this command to initialize a new node project by simply saying npm init -y. Next, you install these dependencies, right? Express, Mongoose, joy.env, which is basically for accessing .env files, right? .env, vars or arguments. Okay, so we say npm install dash dash save dash 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 dev node mom. So this is basically we're installing this as a dev, dependency, not an actual dependency. And then you set up this project structure, given the name of the files, the name of the the name of the file in your controller, model, routes, validation, and of course creating the app.js, the config file, right, and the rest of them here. Okay, so let's click on this src. You see we have the controller right here, one controller file, we have the model file, we have the route file, and we have the validation file. All right, if I go into the app.js, what you see here is simply the import, right, for express mongoose.env, and of course our route file as well. So this is our route file. Okay, so our route file, of course, contains the routes, right, for this particular module we're looking at, which is books, right? So you see we have the endpoints to get book, get the book by ID, the endpoint to create book, update book, and delete book. Okay, and this is where we import the controllers, right? The controller functions, right? One controller file, but then the controller functions. Okay, some guys prefer to call this handlers, right? So these kind of like handle the functionality of the request that comes in through the route. Okay, so the routes have to point to the controller. So we have the .get pointing to the get book, which is a controller, right? It's a controller function. If I click on that, you see what get books should do. Yeah, so I always mention that documenting your code can be very good. So if I simply want to add some documents here, I can even, I mean, there are some tools you can even use to automate this documentation process, especially using some AI tools. There's one I find really interesting these days. It is called CRUD, right? So if I say Control Shift P, not, oh, come on, not this, not this. So if I should highlight this and I say Control, yeah, okay. So let's say Cody. I can see document code, right? I have it highlighted, remember? So it's simply performing that documentation here. That is, kind of automatic, right? Retrieves the list of books, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's pretty much very interesting. I can do the same thing again. I think there's a shortcut for that. Document code. This is okay, that's option D. Let's say option D. So you see, it's basically documenting that code for us right now. Retrieves the book by its unique identifier, which is the ID, right? And also adds these params, right? So we can do the same thing here again. I really enjoy using this tool, but you can decide to do this manually if you want to, right? So create a new book in the database. Having a documentation for your code is, very good. Okay, so these are different controller functions, and what we see here is when we call this get books, we just await book.find. So we have this item here, called book, and this is from our model, right? So you see we have slash model slash book. So if I click on book, right, which is the model, you see it's simply a Mongo schema, right? So it's a Mongo schema that is set up, to serve as a way of, creating a book, retrieving a book, and performing these actions based on the schema you've specified here, right? So if you're creating a book, we are saying, okay, the title of the book should be compulsory. The author is compulsory. You can make some things optional, right? But then with Mongoose, right, serving as an ODM here, we can specify items that should be compulsory or not. Um, and of course, we also have a way to validate those inputs that come in. So regardless of using Mongoose to perform this check, we also perform the check even before the book request gets into the controller. So we have a way to validate the book records or the book object, the JSON object that comes into our controller, right? We're using Joy for this. Joy is a schema validator, right? When it comes in through the route, we can basically use this to compare against what comes in the JSON object, right? In the JSON object. So if I go to the controller here, let's look at creating a book. You see, we have the book schema.validate, the request.body. The request.body is what we send in via Postman. Let's go back to Postman. So when I say create book, what we refer to as the request.body in Express.js is this record. Okay, so I can literally, let's just comment this. For those of you that are not aware of what we're saying, I'm going to comment this, and we can simply say console.log request dot body. Okay, of course I can simply say res.send done. All right, so just to show this example now, if I go back to Postman, I send this, just going to respond with done, right? And it's going to log that object. Okay, so that's the request.body right there. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, yeah. And so we basically validate the request.body against the book schema. So if I click on the book schema, you see that is what we have right here in the book validation file, right? So we validate that book first, and what we're expecting in the book. If we don't have the object that we expect in that book, then we're going to have some errors. So now we expect everything to be required, right? The genre, the pages, the published date, the author, and the title as well. If I go to Postman and I decide to intentionally ignore one, which is the genre, for example, this is going to tell us that genre is required, right? Because Joy is doing that for us. Okay, so yeah, the Joy library is a very good option. There are so many others I've mentioned in the previous class we had as well, but you can experiment with Joy. Okay, so that is how you basically perform the validation. The next thing you do is to say, okay, if you have an error on the validation, return response or status, which is 400, right? And return the JSON message error.details, right? Dot message. So this is going to pick the specific error from, it's going to pick the specific error that you have within the error returned, within the returned error after performing that validation with Joy. Okay. All right, so we have the way this is how you create the book. So we say const book equals new book. This is our model, right? Our Mongoose model. So we say new book, and then we'll pass that object that we have retrieved. Okay, we have received that already from the request.body. Okay, so now we say const save book equals awaits book.save. So this is how you basically save a record, right? Using Mongoose. So we've said book equals new book, okay, and then you say book.save. When you save the book, you return the status to say 201. 201 is the HTTP status that says created, okay? So this stands for created. And finally, you catch any error that is thrown during the process of performing this action. So an error that can be thrown here might be if your database is unreachable, right? That this is a potential error. So at this point, you get an error that might say, could not connect to the database or stuff like that. All right. Yeah. So now we have the controller for updating a book. First, you perform the same validation to ensure that the object sent in is correct, right? And if there are errors, you basically return the error. Now you see we have repetitions here. Okay, we have repetitions here. Uh, this can actually be abstracted as a middleware, but we'll get to talk about middleware in a different class. So you can abstract this away, put it in the middleware, and have the middleware perform all these checks, probably within the route. So you can import that middleware here and just put in the middleware right here to perform all those validations. Okay, we'll look at that in a different class. So back to this, our controller. Yeah, so when you're updating the book, we still perform the same check first, and then we go ahead to say book.find by ID and update. So we are basically updating based on the ID that we get, right? After creating that record. So we find by ID and then we update. So inside this function, you will pass in the ID, right? We pass in the ID of that record, right? Remember that in the Postman section here, when I say update, it's saying we should first put in the param. So this is the param. You see, it's called ID, and inside our code, as you can see, request.param.id. So it's going to take that as the ID that we are using to search for the record, and then the next item it's accepting is the body, right? The body that comes in from the request that it would use to update the record found, if found, basically, right? If found. Okay, so it says this is going to be a new update right there, and we'll say if um, yeah, if there is no book, right? So at this point, it's saying if there is no book, that's why it says if there is no updated, book. If it performs this search and it does not find that, book by that ID, it's going to return a 404. 404 stands for not found, with a JSON message that says book not found. Okay, and it then returns. But yeah, I mean, if it works, as you can see, this is a single if statement here. So if there's no book, it just returns this. But if a book is found, it moves on to this, and then it returns the updated book. All right. So catch if we have any error, right? Maybe database connectivity and all that. Those errors will be captured in here. Okay, so we have the action for deleting a book. Const delete book equals await book.find by ID and delete, right? So this actually performs that delete action. And if the ID isn't found at this point, we simply return book not found. But if it's found, just tell us, book deleted. So if it's not found, this is what we return right here. Okay, the return statement is important. If you don't include that, it's probably going to tell you you're trying to return something after the process was terminated and stuff. So make sure you put it this way. If you can't find the book, return this, right? But if you can find the book, then it will move on to this. Okay. If you want to go the route of if else, that is also fine. This is just a short way to represent the if else block. Okay. Yeah, so you just basically perform that check here. It proceeds to this one. If we're stopping here, this return statement perform the action. If not, it basically moves on to the next. All right, and we have if there are errors, right, connection errors and all that, comes this particular line of code. So if there's an error, we get the error.message after catching that error in this block. Okay, so here is where we export all these actions. After writing these actions, you can export them here, or you can just write, export dot the function name. Okay, so any of them works. This is still using CommonJS and not Module.js. So let's save this. All right, this is the app.js. I think I've explained this already. This is how we mount the routes into this app. Instance, into the Express app instance. We mount the API/books routes. We call all the book routes, right? So when I say all the book routes, it's because we have a book route here where we say const router equals express.router, and we use that router to basically add all these actions. What I love to do myself is to say const books routes, just like this, and I'll say book routes.get. Just pass this whole thing in here, and I export the books route itself. I export the books route inside my app.js. This is where I now proceed, to grab that books route just like this. So, I mean, this works already, right? So what we have initially is fine, but just to, make it more, make this, variable tied to this module, right? To make it more detailed. So I just put it like this: book routes and all that. Someone is asking difference between request.body versus request.param.id. So back to Postman. These are the parameters, right? So parameters you add in here is a path param. We have request.params, right? We have request.query. If it's a query param, for example, if I have a query param right here, it's going to be treated as request.query, then dot the key, right? But for the path variable, it's treated as request, which is REQ, but the param, which is the path variable, dot the ID. So this is the ID, which is what I passed in here. Okay. Now for the body is what comes in here, right? The JSON body. Okay. So this is the dot body. So if I say request dot body dot title, I get this value, right? Request dot body dot pages, I get 600. And if I say request dot param dot ID, I get this. So yeah, Lawrence, hope that makes sense. Hope you understand that. Let me go back to the code. All right, let's just revert this to what you have on your end as well. Either of them works perfectly. Yeah, so let's close the router as well, the router file. Let's take a look at what do I? Yeah, the models. Okay, I think I explained that already. So this is pretty much it. I think I can go into Postman now and explain details about Postman. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So we can actually test this already again with Postman, while we can visualize with MongoDB Compass, like I explained the other time. So you can use MongoDB Compass. You can also use Studio 3T, which is something I love to use a lot these days. So let's connect our DB first on MongoDB Compass. Let's look at the book DB that was created while we tested that application. So these are the documents, right? Marv goes to school. Let us come back in here. So we created the book. Marv goes to school. Let us delete that book. Right. First, we have to click on the created book, and we grab that ID. Or we can simply go to our MongoDB Compass here, grab the ID from here, put that ID in here. We're about to delete that book. So now we have book deleted as the response we get. So if I should refresh this page, the expectation is we shouldn't see that book. And of course, it goes off after deleting the book from the Postman instance right there. Okay, so someone said the file structure, is it based on a framework? I mean, model, route, etc. Well, we actually have what we call MVC. But if you take a look at this, let's just close this right now. So if you take a look at this, you can actually see the model, which is what you have in M, the C, which is the controller, which is what you have in MVC, right? But what you can see here is the view. Okay. So this is still based off, the model view controller pattern. Although you don't have the view because we're not trying to, we're probably just building an API and we're not trying to build a complete application, which includes a front end. That is not the goal of this, right? We have different patterns you can use when it comes to structuring your code base. What I recommend most times is structuring your code base based off what you and your team can enjoy or can familiarize yourself with, right? Because uh, there's something we always call cognitive load, right? The way you tend to think about your project is dependent on the amount of details that goes into that project, right? Even if you know how to use MVC very well, this can be very bloated. Imagine having 50 modules and you have 50 files, right? Or 50 controller files, and you have 50 model files and 50 route files. This can be disturbing. What most people would rather do is have a different structure where they get to do something like this. So they get to have, let's say, modules. Let me do that outside. So they get to have something like this. And I do this a lot myself. So you see, I have like modules, or sometimes I call it packages. And in here, I can have like books, right? Books, okay? Inside the modules as well, I can have a different package, maybe authentication. I can have auth, right? I can have preference or settings, okay? And now each of these are treated as its own module. So in here, I would have the model JS, right? I would have controller.js. This is a a modularized monolith, right? So it's a modular monolith, so I can have routes. Okay. If you have also looked at what they call the onion architecture, this might look a bit familiar, although there are other things that goes into uh, saying you are actually using the onion architecture. Okay. So controller, model, route, and maybe one more thing that would come in here would be my repository, right? So in the previous code base you saw, in the controller, you see we are performing database actions inside the controller. If you are building a more robust application, I would always recommend you have a repository or a data layer where you basically perform DB related actions, right? That would be the repository here. So database related actions, right? And in here you basically have the requests handlers, right? In here, you have the business. I usually put in the business logic, right, inside the model. And sometimes I also business logic, and sometimes I also put in like the Mongoose model, right? Then repository, I mentioned that already. Route, of course, this is the route or the endpoints. Endpoints, yeah, for everything auth, right? So I would have auth dot sign up, auth dot login, auth dot everything related to authentication. Sometimes I also put in the schema here. So if you have schema like the verification. What you use for verifying the object that comes in. So in here I can have my serializers, the serializers, the schema objects, right, with joy. Whether a schema for when you create a new user, when you try to reset password, I can have all those schemas in here. I love this pattern a lot, right? I love this. I'm just showing you. Most times you'll probably find some sample projects I have on my repository using this pattern because it makes it clear that if you have an authentication issue, you know the folder to go to. You find everything related to authentication in one place. I can even decide to pull off, authentication completely from the project, and I'm rest assured it doesn't affect any other part of the project, right? I can decide to switch my entire database to, a different database, and I don't need to edit the code I already have, right? I just have to edit that on the database level, and the controller works seamlessly, the model works seamlessly, and yeah, it's just a pattern I love, and I'm sure most of you, based on the explanation I've given right now, you might probably find it interesting as well. All right, so do well to go through this file. It's already on GitHub. The link was shared with you. Go through this file, experiment with it. Even the Postman collection is right there as well. Let's just take a look at Postman one more time. So drop a message in the comment if you are with me, just to be sure that we are following. I hope you guys are not confused about anything. Let us, take a look at how to use Postman. Okay. So for those of you that don't have any prior experience, let's just close all tabs, save all of them, save, and yeah, drop a message in the chats. If you can hear me, Oluwasegun, Lawrence, who else do I have here? JP Northkid, Nana Kwame. That sounds Ghanaian. Drop a message in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, follow it. Nice, nice. Okay, so first, I mean, I mentioned already, Postman is a tool for developing and testing APIs. You see, I have a workspace right here. So let's assume you don't have a workspace. You can click on workspace, create workspace, and you set up a new workspace, right? You can specify, or you can basically explore some templates they have for API development, API testing. Yeah, but let's just say you create a new workspace. You put in the workspace name. You specify if you want to have, different people on the team. If it's just you, right? Or anyone on the internet, right? If you want to keep it public, you can also specify. I already have different workspaces. You see, I have workspaces for myself, for some brands I work with, right? So let's go back into my personal space here. I have the 300 dev days. These are collections, right? You see, collections, APIs, environments, mock servers, monitors, flows, and history. Let's start with collection. Probably we'll focus on this for now. So when I click on, let's close flows. Okay. When I click on collections, you see I have different collections. I can import a new collection, I can also create a new collection. So let's click on new. You see we have HTTP, GraphQL, gRPC, WebSocket, Socket.io. These are different type of APIs that you can get to set up, right? Let's just click on collection. So we have new collection. You can name that collection just by double clicking here. So let's call that book API collection. Okay. All right. So you see that name is also shown here, book API collection. You can mark this as a favorite. You want it to sit on top as some of the favorite uh, list of endpoints you like to explore. I can add new requests, right? So I can add new requests because right now it's empty, right? It's currently empty. Of course, you can share. So there are some details around here. You can share with people. You can run this in Postman. Yeah, so you can basically share with people by putting their email here and specifying the permission they have, whether as viewer or editor. Some of these things you need to actually have like a paid plan, right? If you don't have a paid plan, some of these features might not work well for you. But the free plan is pretty much good. At the top here, you can invite folks to your workspace. You can change some of the settings you have, right? The theme, shortcuts, add-ons, proxy. You can basically perform some of these adjustments here, right? These are just the configurations. You get to see notifications right here. Your profile, you can view your profile on the web if you click view profile. You can sign out. As you can see, I already signed in, so you should have an account. You can add multiple accounts and get to switch accounts as well. You can upgrade, right? I mean, you can upgrade. Yeah. So right now you see I've added the maximum limits for the free plan, 3 members, which I mean it's fine. So if you want to have more members in here, you can upgrade, of course. All right, so now that is it for some of the basic details. Of course, you have the API network as well, so you can see a lot of public APIs, right? For some of you, you want to build maybe something with Stripe or Postman or what's it called, Paystack, right? You can simply search. So I can search for Stripe right here. Let's see. I don't know what's wrong with my keyboard. I keep making mistakes this evening. So Stripe. When I search for Stripe, I'm going to get some of the publicly available Stripe documentations, right, that we have on Postman. So you see, we have Stripe developers. We have a bunch of others, Stripe developer APIs, right? You can search for Paystack. You can search for. We have a lot of APIs. I'm just giving you these examples, right? If you figure out there's an API on the internet you want to explore, you can search for it, and there's a good chance that they already have that in here. Okay, let's go back to our home. Let's go into mouse workspace. All right. So in here at this moment, we can create request. So I can put in a new request. When specifying the request, you can put the name of the request. So we can say, let us. You know what we're going to do? Let's work with an open. Let's go to. I think it's AP. Is it API fun? API list. So API list.fun. Okay. So public list of free APIs. This is the Lord of the Rings API. So let's click on this. I hope it doesn't require some API key. Let's see. How do we use it? Okay, go to API docs. All right, so this is hosted on Heroku. There's nothing here yet. Well, I think maybe it is down already. Let's okay, probably down. Probably down. Let's go back. Okay, so we have meta weather. Don't know if this is food API. Okay, hope I don't need to configure anything here. Just give me you're not authorized. I see. Okay. It's been long since I used this, so I can't really figure out a particular API we can just text with. Okay, so random fox. Let's click on that. Go to API docs. Ah, come on. Come on. Okay, so I really need to come back and read some of these stuffs. Sure, I mean there are ways to use some of these, right? We have a lot of free ones as well. But yeah, but if we have to go through this list of errors and errors and errors, let's go to Let's go to JSON placeholder. Yeah, JSON placeholder. That's a good one. That's a good one. So JSON placeholder, we can see the endpoint right here. So let's copy this. Let's say slash to dos. They actually have like different endpoints, posts. So I can simply copy this first. Let's copy. Okay, so I use Control C to copy. Let's paste that in here. So that is a get. It gets all the to dos. You see, we have how many items do we get? I think about 100 or so. Right? Yeah, we get about 100 items, I believe, or is it just? Yeah, maybe just 10. I don't think it's just 10. So I think it's about 100. Um, yeah. So this is basically what I use in specifying. Okay, this pretty is going to select, the should I say the closest data type that is returned, and it's going to present it in that fashion. So now it knows that this is JSON, right? And it presents it properly as a JSON object. If you use preview, this gives you the entire raw item. Raw also gives you the item, but at least better presented than preview. Preview is usually used if it's a PDF or image that is returned. So pretty is going to structure that response, the textual response you got, based on what it identified it as. Okay. So yes, and you can see the status, right? The time it took to send that request, and of course receive the response as well, the size of the object that was returned, and you can of course save this as an example. It's going to save it as an example inside, this, right? So you can call this sample get request. So you can actually name your examples as well. So yes, sample get request, and for this you can say fetch all to dos, right? So fetch all to dos. So it makes sense to name your endpoint so that it will be easy for you to understand, right? So you see we have authorization, headers, params, body, script settings. The parameters would contain both the query parameters that you can have, right? By putting a query parameter, it's like I'm trying to use that query to search or something. So if I say we're trying to get or search by name, you see we have a question mark before the name, right? And then if you put in the value, you basically have equals to the value. So if I say equals to Marv, you see we have Marv right there. Let's take off that quote. So if I say username, we have a new value which is and username, another query param. I can say Mav magic, okay. And yeah, so if we decide to put a path param, we have query param, we have path param. So if I take this off, for example, slash to dos, and I say slash ID, right? That gives us a path variable because I put a column before the ID. So it says, oh, we should have a dynamic path, right? And we have this item pop up right here. So we can add a path ID. What is the value, right? So we have the query params, we have the path params. We also have the authorization set up here where you can specify if a request should go in with authorization or not. Some of the standard authorization patterns that we have is the bearer token or JWT bearer option, right? We have the OAuth. I mean, these are pretty much all standards. I would say some of the most used. For simple APIs, you're expecting to use maybe the bearer token authentication, username and password authentication, or using the OAuth2 or even JWT, right? I mean, JWT bearer is most times very similar to bearer token in terms of the implementation standards for developers, right? When you are using bearer token, I would say most of the APIs I've seen, that token is usually a JWT token, right? Yeah, so you can specify if you're expected to pass in an authorization value, maybe some sort of key. Sometimes we decide to pass that into the header as well here. So I can simply say authorization in here instead, right? This is also going to represent what I was showing you earlier. We can put in the bearer token in here. We can put some additional items that are expected to be passed in the header if I need to. If the API developer tells me that I need to pass some items in the header, this is where I put those items, right? We have the body section where you specify what goes into the body. If you select raw and you put in, JSON, it shows that you want to pass a JSON object, right? So sometimes you might be working with GraphQL, trying to send a file, right, by using form data. So you can send either text or file in here, right? Yeah, so you can put a file and then you select the file from here. So you can add the file you're trying to send a music file to the backend, for example, you can basically put that in here. So just to show you what a practical example would look like, if I go back to the book API and I create a new, let's just create a new request. So if I say add request and I say I want to send a file, now, of course, there are some, there's something called Multer, MULTER. When working with Express, it's something we get to use a lot for file upload. Let's just say upload. Okay, so I think my mic is yeah. Give me a second. Upload. So for the get here, I'll basically change this to post. So of course, I have this local host. I'm just going to say slash API slash books slash upload. So just to show an example, right? Slash upload. All right. So I'm going to go to body. Let's go to form data. Put the key. Let's call this file text. Select file. Let's add a new file. Let's just select introduction to MongoDB. Okay, that's a PDF file, by the way. You can add a description if you want to, but this is going to slash API slash book slash upload. Let's go to our code. Let's go back to our code. Did I close it? Oh, I did. I think I did close it. Okay, going to open that again. Book API. All right. Let's go into the source one more time. Routes. Within the routes, click on book route. So here, I can simply say router.post, and I can specify slash upload, right? I can say we are going to a controller. So we're going to a controller called there will be upload file. Okay. So of course, this controller we don't have it. We don't have it as part of the controller items we have in here. I just choose to add that controller called upload file. So I can say const upload file, right? So you just have to make sure it looks similar to this object you have here, because remember you are working with the request and response pattern here. So I can just copy this, right? Paste it in here. That's not something you should do. If you're following this style already, you should just continue having it in the controller. Just trying to show you an example here, right? Someone said from data, oh, form data versus form URL code. Yeah. There is a bit of a difference. I will talk about that shortly. So we have const. Let's just take this off. What I'm just going to show you is let's try to look at the entire request object. So if I say console, let's take this off. Console.log request. Okay, for the upload item, and I'm then going to say res.send done, right? Just to terminate that. Yeah. Let's see. I said slash upload. Okay. Hope we don't have any mistake there. Let's run that file. So I'm just going to say npm stats. I think I saw that now. npm stats. Okay. So if you have any error, if we have any error here, this is going to tell us we have an error. Let's go into Postman and we set slash upload. Let's send this just to see what we get. So it says done, right? If I go back to VS Code, you see we can see the entire object that we have in here. It shows that the part we called was upload and it's a post, right, for the method. If I scroll, let's scroll. We have a lot of items in here, by the way. So if I keep scrolling, I'm just trying to see the detail of that file. So let's keep scrolling. Let's keep scrolling. Okay. Um, okay, right here. So you see, we have the form data that came in, right? And I'm sure we can simply get even the name of the file. Let's just scroll down to the top. Okay, I didn't want to. Let's see. Check. What's the name of that file? Go back again. Postman. So that's introduction to MongoDB.pdf. Uh, I don't want to bring in. Oh, I see. Okay, so I don't want to bring in. What's it called? I mentioned this just a while ago. Malta, right? I don't want to bring in Malta. But I pretty much at least we can see that this, shows we're trying to bring in a file, right? Where we have the type of, data that was received, which is multi-parts. Can't seem to find that again right here. But yeah, so okay, so this is it. It shows that this is coming from a user agent postman, and the expectation, the content type is a multi-platform data. When I explain or teach you how to work with a file upload, by then we would set all the necessary params in Express to show that we should be able to receive the form data, and we would also use Malta to specify the path for uploading that file. So we're going to look at that later, right? But the point is, you can basically capture different file types, right? If you're working with Malta, okay. There are other ways to work with that, but when using form data, you can basically accept this type of files, right? From here, you can also see the specification of the file. You see, we have this is 157 kilobytes, right? Just 157 kilobytes. Okay. All right, so let's see what we have next. Okay, yeah, I mentioned binary as well. So you can use binary if you are trying to just select a file, and that file will be sent in as a binary file converted into base 64. Yeah, most times that's what you get to see when you send this. You send it as a binary file. So binary files are, I mean, most times you use this for sending image files, right? What I've seen a lot of people use it to do is, to send the image file. Okay, give me a second. All right, so please, you can drop your questions if you have any before we continue, so we can finish up on time. I think we just have about 1 minute, but can give me like 3 or 4 minutes to round up. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me see. All right, so let's continue. Yeah, so that's it for binary. We've also looked at form data. If you say none, it means you're not sending any item, right? Whatsoever. If you're working with the X www form URL encoded, option here, so it basically, it gives you this option to have, key and value, right? But then you're not specifying if you're trying to upload like an actual file. Although you can actually use this to upload like a base 64 file if you have converted that on your front end or on the client end. You can pass in the key and then pass in the entire base 64 string as value, right? But it's basically using a key and value pairs for representing what you're trying to sell, what you're trying to pass to your backend, right? So it represents what you're trying to pass to your backend at the end of the day. Form data is mostly going to help you transfer files, whether images, PDFs, and the rest, without necessarily going the route of compressing into string, right? Yeah. All right. So this is widely supported by a lot of web servers, right? It's just key and values with descriptions, right? You can add multiple of this, and it's easy to read or interpret by a lot of web servers. Okay. So hope that makes sense. Let me see who asked that question. Hope that makes sense. Lawrence. All right, so that is how we basically, get to put in a lot of, requests, and also configure some of those requests. By the way, if you want to check out the code, say you are trying to implement with your front end, you can simply click on this. Now, there are many other things to look at when it comes to Postman, like setting up environments, API, setting up APIs, not collections this time, but actually defining APIs with code, setting up mock servers, working with flows, and setting up monitors for your API, also documenting your API. But we can't look at all of them in this class. So just in case you are trying to work on, you're using a client to communicate to the backend, you can actually see how to make a request, calling this specific endpoint you've configured here in different languages, different tools. So we have Shell, we have Python, right? If I click on Python, you see the request for using the request library or the package, right? For some of us already familiar with Vue and React, for example, We can use the Axios, right? So you can search for Axios. Let's just look at Node.js Axios. So you see JavaScript, where is Node.js Axios right here. So it gives us the the structure. So all we have to do is call this, right, and it's going to send that request. Pretty straightforward. So if I copy this, for example, let's just uh, let's just create a new application, right? Not necessarily view, but let's just go back and say API call. Sorry, CD make directory first. API call CD API. Come on, API call npm init dash y and npm install Axios. Oh, no, no, that's wrong. Axios. Okay, just going to say touch main.js. Keep making these silly mistakes. Okay, so rom main.js. Okay, so if I say vi main.js, I thought I deleted that already. What do I have there? Main.js. Okay, so move main.js to main.js. Okay, vi main.js. If I paste this in here, right, I'm just going to run this with Node. So if I say Node main.js, you see it actually sends that request and we have a new data created now. I call that again, call that again, call that again. I just created 4 records. So if I go to my database, if I use MongoDB Compass, right, I can just connect. I can see that I have in the book DB, I have 5 records, which is the 4 I just created now with the additional one that I had earlier. Okay, so you see that's how we basically get the code that we need to execute that request straight from this is the code right here, straight from Postman. Okay, so I hope you had fun. I hope you were able to learn 1 or 2 things from the session today. With time, we're going to be organizing a workshop for Postman where we get to learn every detail there is, to use in Postman. Right? Please let me know in the form that was shared with you. Give your feedback, drop your feedbacks as well on WhatsApp or Discord, and let me know if you enjoyed today's class. Do have a wonderful evening, guys. I will see you in the next class tomorrow. Bye. Have fun.